on, why don't you call me Will? I mean, we've known each other long enough to drop the formalities.
Will, I shall call you Will.
So guys, your sci-fi guy here, sci-fi guy Will, and we're talking Wesley Crusher and Will Robinson, the two whiz kids of sci-fi, right? The two science fiction genius, dare I say, child kid geniuses. So I was watching one of my favorite Lost in Space episodes the other day, War of the Robots, where the great Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet makes a guest starring appearance, and it occurred to me just how similar Will Robinson, or I should say Wesley Crusher, because of course Wesley came later, Will was first, how similar the Wesley Crusher character was to Will Robinson, intentionally or not. Because you look at the way Will Robinson was a genius, he was a technical science genius, or at least he certainly was far in advance and ahead of all the crew, his father and Colonel West and Dr. Smith. They would always repair the robot and give them technical science techniques, strategies, and ways to overcome the problems and the obstacles, right, of the adventure. And then, of course, we had Wesley Crusher, who I guess was smarter. I guess he proved to be more of a genius, a super genius. But the bottom line to these two characters is, from my understanding, from my friends, from my research, the Will Robinson character is not as hated as the Wesley Crusher character. And now I'm sure there are people who hate Will Robinson, don't like him much, but I've not seen the sort of vitriol, the real animosity that Wesley Crusher enables and engenders and triggers in people. So now you could say there's lots of reasons, there's lots of elements to why. I think one of the most important, though, and I think this is the overriding one, you can say writing, the material, the way the writers, the next generation writers and Lost in Space writers, the way they treated that character, sure, Wesley and Will Robinson. But for me, the most important part of it is the actor. It's the acting talent and the way that actor portrays the character. As we know, there's many characters who we either love to hate or not very nice. JR from Dallas comes to mind. Larry Hagman took that character, which you were supposed to loathe, and people loved him. Okay, love to hate maybe. But so you can rise above material as an actor. And I think with Next Generation, with Wesley Crusher, with Wil Wheaton, he never rose above the quote unquote poor or maybe unfair material because, he was this child genius, this super genius. So with Billy Mumy, now Bill Mumy, at the time, I'm pretty sure he was always credited as Billy Mumy. Bill Mumy, the way he fleshed out the Will Robinson character, it was just much more likable. And I just think he's a more talented actor. Now, debate me and, go back and forth to say, oh, Wil Wheaton's this great actor. He never rose above, I think, that Wesley Crusher shadow. In Big Bang Theory, he's playing himself, kind of a fictionalized version, sure. But the Will Robinson character, as played by Billy Mumy, is just so much more likable and so much more, I think, real. So you could argue, sure, it is material, it's scripting, it's the story, yeah. But the way Billy Mumy made that character lovable and likable, I don't know anyone who really hates Billy Mumy or Will Robinson. One more important thing too is Will Robinson was essentially part of a trio: Dr. Smith, the robot, and Will Robinson. Danger, danger, Will Robinson. So it was almost like the Three Stooges. They were almost like the Sci-Fi Three Stooges. So for that was an important element too. You could argue that because Dr. Smith was so sort of unlikable, loved to hate, and the robot was beloved, so Will was sort of in the middle, almost mediating, sort of keeping them both in line in ways. And in the War of the Robots, he of course does start this robot they find, the Robbie the robot. He, of course, his technical genius finds it and upgrades it and puts it back in working condition. And there's no kind of like, again, animosity between, as compared to Wesley Crusher. So what do you think? I think there is certainly the kid factor, the writing factor, as why these characters might not be that liked. But with Will Robinson, with Billy Mumy, you had a more talented actor, or certainly he brought this portrayal in a more likable way. And I think that's why Wesley Crusher kind of failed and still does. What do you think? Give us your feedback. Give us your thoughts. Hope you're enjoying. Hope you're subscribing. See you soon.